Hey everybody, it's Apooz here. Welcome to Pizza with Apooz. What we're gonna do today is we're gonna do a traditional New York style pizza dough where it's gonna be a direct dough. As you all know, I love to do a indirect dough, which means I use a pre-ferment, usually a Polish, when I make my dough because I think it comes out better that way, but I want to show you how a traditional New York pizza dough is made, at least from what I remember when I used to work in the pizzerias. So that was a long time ago, but this is basically the way we used to do it back then. I don't know what they do nowadays. Like I said, I'm going back a long time ago. I'm going back close to 30 years ago, so maybe they do it different now, I don't know. So what I'm about to do, I have all my ingredients here, but what I did was I use active dry yeast, and I want to make sure it's good. So before I do anything, I have warm water here, maybe about 100 degrees. I'm going to add 2.5 grams. Make sure we zero this out. So I'm going to add 2.5 grams of yeast, because that's how much I want to use for this recipe, and I'll give you all the details later. All right, we used a tiny bit more, but that's okay. You know, it's really not that bad if you go 2.5, 3 grams. So we just want to make sure this activates. So we're going to stir it around a little bit. Let it melt in the water there. And if it's foaming, that means it's active. Yeast is a living thing, so certain yeast you have to activate first. But you want to make sure it's alive anyway, because if it's not, there's no use in doing anything, and we would have to get a different yeast. So we'll be back at you. Okay, so now that I know my yeast is good, I want to add sugar to this. It's a New York style dough, it has sugar. So, like I said before, I'll give you all the numbers of this recipe later. Right now, I just want to add all the ingredients together and start going. Okay, so what we're going to do now is give this a quick stir. You want to try and melt the sugar into the water and yeast. Then we're going to put it in our KitchenAid. Don't forget, you can always do this by hand. Okay, so now what we want to do is get our flour. Now I'm using a bread flour. I like it. It's not your traditional flour for New York style pizza dough. They use, most of the places at least, use it's a flour by General Mills. It's called All Trumps. But it's very hard to get. So I like the bread flour. It's a nice strong flour. And what you always want to do is you want to sift it. You definitely want to sift it. Make sure there's no clumps. And that goes for almost any recipe you're doing with flour, pancakes or cakes or whatever. You always want to sift your flours. Now we're going to do a lot of flour here. So we're about halfway there. Almost there. All right, we are there. All right, our flour is done, so we're going to start mixing. Now you can put the salt in right now if you want, but I generally like to put in about half the flour. Then I'll throw in the salt. Throw in the other half of flour, and then I'll throw in some olive oil. So I'm gonna start mixing, and we'll get back at you. So I have about half the flour in there with that water and yeast. I'm slowly mixing it up. What I want to do now is with the rest of the flour, I'm going to add my salt to that flour, mix it together, and then add it to the main bowl. Just mix that together. And then we're gonna speed this up a little bit. I want all this flour that's already here to incorporate with the water, yeast, and sugar mixture before I start adding more flour. It might take a couple, 2-3 minutes maybe. Might have to help the edges a little bit. Coming along. All right, so now we're going to start adding the rest of this mixture in. Slowly. So what I'm gonna do is get this all mixed up. We're gonna add the olive oil to it. And we're gonna let the machine work it for a little bit, maybe 10 minutes or so. Let the machine do the kneading for us. And then we'll take a look at the dough, see how it is, see if we need to work it a little more or not. But you want to go roughly 10 minutes, maybe. So this is coming together nicely. I wish I had another camera so I could show you what it's looking like. So what I want to do is I want to get the olive oil ready to pour into there. So we're ready to put the oil in there. So we're just going to drizzle that in, let the dough pick it up and incorporate it. And like I said, we're going to mix this now for roughly 10 minutes and see where we're at. Okay, now that it's been almost 10 minutes, I think I mixed it for about 8 minutes. You want to take it out of the bowl and you want to feel it. And it feels pretty good. So there's a couple of things you can do at this point. If you're not 100% that the dough is right, let it rest for about 30 minutes. And that'll give the gluten time to relax and strengthen and get stronger, which is what you want. So what you want to do to test the gluten is take a little piece and see how it stretches. See, the gluten is a little beat up right now. So we're going to let it rest for about a half hour. We're going to make it into a big bowl here because we want the gluten to be a little stronger. So what we're doing right here and what the machine did is it actually broke down the gluten. But we want it a little stronger. So it needs to rest to get stronger. So what you want to do is just let it rest. You want to cover it with something. So what I do is I just take the bowl and cover it. You don't want too much air getting in there. If the dough is already strong enough, the other option you can do is bowl it up right away. So we're going to make 3 pizza doughs here. So you would break it into 3 equal parts and ball it up, put it in your containers, and let it rise for a couple of hours, 1 to 2 hours. You want it to about double in size. And then you throw it in the refrigerator and do a cold ferment. So we're going to use this dough the next day. You can use it today after it rises the first time. You can definitely use it, but it's not going to be as good as if you let it cold ferment for 24 hours or so, or whatever. A little longer if you want. You get a fermentation gives it a better flavor. So, like I said, we're gonna let this sit for about a half hour, take a look at it, and then boil it up. Okay, we're back. It's been about 20 minutes or so. I want to check on the dough, see how it's doing. So as you can tell, it's even risen a little bit from where it was. But this dough feels really nice. I mean, it's nice and smooth. When it's this smooth, you know it's done. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna separate this into 3 parts and weigh it out to make sure they're at where you want them to be. Now what I want is 300-gram dough balls because I want to make a 12 to 14-inch pizza. All right, they're all about 300, a little more maybe, which is fine. And like I said, I will give you the measurements. So, but what we want to do here is just ball them up. And you've seen me do this before. Fold over and squeeze. Then what you want to do is make sure it's closed on the bottom. Okay, there's one. Squeeze it together. Fold it and squeeze it together. And then make sure it's closed on the bottom. Same thing. Squeeze it together. Fold it into itself and squeeze it together. Fold it, squeeze it, and just keep going around. See that? And then you want to make sure you close it on the bottom. Okay, there's different ways you can do this. You can put it into a container or in a bowl individually, into individual bowls. Throw a little olive oil on the top. Close it up, whether you have a lid for the bowl or if you just use plastic wrap. And then let it rest. Like I said before, you're gonna let it rise for 1 to 2 hours until it about doubles in size. You know, so take a look at it, see what size it is, and when you see it double in size, you're good to throw it in the refrigerator and let it cold ferment for 1 day. 24 hours, 30 hours, how, you know, whenever you want to use it for the next day. So that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna throw them into bowls and let them rise. Okay, let me show you what I'm talking about. I have a little olive oil mister here. You put your own olive oil in it, you pump it up till you get all, you know, and then you're gonna spray the container with the little olive oil. Just not that much. You can even pour it in and rub it around a little bit. All right. Now you put each dough ball in. And now you spray the tops of the dough ball. So we got that. Now you cover it, you want it airtight. That's why I like these little cheap plastic containers you get at a supermarket or something. They work pretty good. All right, you can even stack them, and you leave them at room temperature until they double in size. So we'll be back at you when they double in size, so I can show you what it looks like. You just saw what size they are, right? So you just want to make sure they're airtight. And that's about it for now. Okay, as you see, they've about doubled in size. So we're going to throw them in a refrigerator right now. And when you're ready to use them, you want to take them out of the refrigerator about an hour to 2 hours before you're ready to use them. That way they come to room temperature. Easier to work with that way. Hey, how we doing? Like I said, I was going to give you all the measurements for the dough that I made today. I made 300-gram dough balls. The recipe I used is one I created myself using baker's percentage, which I have another video on, which I'll link in the description for you to watch it. But for this recipe, I did a 61% hydration, which means 61% of the flour weight, 61% of that would be the water. So the flour, I did 559 grams. Water, I used bottled water. Use any kind of filtered water you want, pretty much, reverse osmosis or bottled water. You don't want to use faucet water, unless, of course, you're in New York, where the water, I don't know if it still is, but back in the day, it was excellent. That's why we always had such good pizza in New York. But with that said, I used 341 grams of water. Sea salt, I used 14 grams, 2.5%. Sugar, I used 11 grams, which is about 2%. Olive oil, I used 11 grams, about 2%. And yeast, instant dried yeast, I used 2.9 grams. I originally wanted to do 2.5. I added a little extra. That's okay. So, like I said in the video earlier, 2.5 to 3 grams for this amount of dough is fine. If you're using a fresh yeast dough, you kind of want to double that. So you'd want to use 5 grams for this amount of dough, at least 5 grams. Because it's not as concentrated, I guess. I don't know the exact science behind it, but so I will put in the description this recipe, and I will also leave a link in the description of the baker's percentage video that I did that explains how to use baker's percentage to scale your recipes up and down when it comes to the pizza dough. It's pretty simple. So, all right. I hope this video helped you. I hope all my videos help you. And this is Apooz signing off. So you all have a wonderful one, all right? Ciao.